NCIS Mark Harmon reveals the Gibbs rule he follows in real life, and I'm impressed. For more than 2 decades, NCIS has remained one of television's most dependable success stories. While crime procedurals often rise and fall with changing trends, this series managed to build something deeper than weekly mysteries. At the center of that endurance stood Leroy Jethro Gibbs, played by Mark Harmon. Gibbs was not flashy, overly emotional, or eager to dominate every room with speeches. Instead, he led through consistency, discipline, and a quiet understanding of human behavior. Much of that identity came through his famous Gibbs rules, the personal code he lived by throughout the series. Fans of NCIS remember many of those rules instantly. Never let suspects stay together. Always carry a knife. Never apologize. It's a sign of weakness. Some were practical, others philosophical, and a few became legendary because they perfectly reflected Gibbs himself. Yet, what makes these rules fascinating is not simply that they worked inside a fictional investigative unit. It is that many viewers recognized truths within them that applied to everyday life. Recently, Mark Harmon revealed that one Gibbs rule particularly resonates with him personally, and hearing that was surprisingly meaningful. In a world obsessed with shortcuts, speed, and constant self-promotion, Harmon's admiration for a principle rooted in loyalty and awareness feels refreshing. It also reveals why both the actor and the character connected so strongly with audiences for so many years. What makes this especially impressive is that Harmon never seemed interested in turning Gibbs into a larger-than-life superhero. Instead, he understood that the most powerful people are often the ones who live according to quiet principles. The Gibbs rules were memorable not because they sounded clever, but because they reflected hard-earned wisdom. Harmon carrying one of those ideas into his real life suggests that the line between actor and character became more meaningful over time. One reason Gibbs became such an iconic television figure is because he represented stability. Television characters often evolve by becoming more chaotic, morally conflicted, or emotionally unpredictable. Gibbs was different. He evolved through patience and subtle vulnerability, but his core values stayed intact. That consistency created trust with viewers. Audiences knew that no matter how dangerous the case became, Gibbs would approach it with integrity and instinct. The rule Harmon reportedly values in real life centers around paying attention to people and understanding the importance of loyalty. That choice says a great deal about him. Many actors might gravitate toward one of the tougher or more dramatic Gibbs rules because they sound intimidating. Instead, Harmon chose a principle connected to relationships and awareness. It reflects emotional intelligence rather than authority. In many ways, this explains why Gibbs never felt like a stereotype. He could be stern and intimidating, but beneath that was someone deeply protective of his team. He noticed details others ignored. He remembered emotional wounds people tried to hide. He understood that leadership was not about controlling people through fear, but about earning their trust through consistency. Modern culture often celebrates loud personalities. Social media rewards instant reactions, quick opinions, and constant visibility. Against that backdrop, Gibbs almost feels old-fashioned. He rarely wasted words. He listened more than he spoke. He observed carefully before acting. Surprisingly, those qualities now seem more valuable than ever. Harmon's admiration for that mindset makes sense because his career followed a similarly grounded path. Unlike many television stars who constantly chased reinvention, Harmon built his reputation steadily. He became known for professionalism, reliability, and calm leadership behind the scenes. Cast members frequently described him as someone who set the tone on set without needing to demand attention. That sounds remarkably similar to Gibbs. There is something deeply appealing about people who live according to principles rather than trends. The Gibbs rules gave viewers a sense that wisdom could come from experience instead of endless self-help jargon. Some of the rules were harsh, certainly, but even the controversial ones reflected a worldview shaped by pain, discipline, and responsibility. The most effective leaders in life are rarely the loudest people in the room. They are the people others trust during difficult moments. Gibbs embodied that idea repeatedly throughout NCIS. When chaos erupted, his team looked to him not because he had all the answers immediately, but because they believed he would find the right path eventually. That trust mattered more than charisma. Part of what made Harmon's performance so compelling was restraint. Many actors overplay authority figures by making them constantly intense or aggressive. Harmon understood that real authority often comes from stillness. Gibbs could silence a room with a look because Harmon knew how to communicate emotion without excessive dialogue. That subtlety became one of the defining features of NCIS. Beneath the procedural structure was a story about family. Gibbs was not simply solving crimes each week. He was protecting a group of damaged but loyal people trying to find purpose together. His rules became part survival guide, part emotional armor. When Harmon says he follows one of those rules in real life, it reminds viewers that fictional stories can genuinely shape how people think and behave. Television is often dismissed as temporary entertainment, but memorable characters influence audiences in lasting ways. People remember lessons from fictional mentors because stories connect emotionally in ways lectures rarely do. Consider how many fans quote Gibbs' rules during ordinary conversations. Some use them humorously, while others sincerely apply them to relationships or work situations. That cultural impact is remarkable for a procedural drama. Few television shows create philosophies audiences continue referencing years later. The role Harmon admires also highlights something increasingly rare: attentiveness. Modern life trains people to multitask constantly. Conversations compete with notifications, headlines, and distractions. Gibbs, however, paid attention. He noticed hesitation in someone's voice. He watched body language carefully. He sensed when someone was lying, long before evidence confirmed it. That level of awareness extends beyond investigative work. In real life, truly listening to people is becoming uncommon. Many individuals wait for their turn to speak instead of genuinely hearing others. Gibbs understood that observation reveals truth more effectively than noise. Harmon, recognizing the value of that principle, demonstrates maturity. After decades in Hollywood, he could easily focus on fame or career achievements. Instead, he appears drawn to a lesson about understanding people. That perspective feels grounded in humanity rather than ego. Another reason this revelation resonates is because fans often wonder how much actors resemble their iconic characters. Sometimes the answer is very little. Yet in Harmon's case, there always seemed to be overlap between the calm professionalism associated with him and the demeanor Gibbs displayed on screen. Hearing that he genuinely follows one of Gibbs' principles makes that connection feel authentic. Of course, not every Gibbs rule translates perfectly into modern life. Some were intentionally exaggerated for dramatic effect. Yet the underlying themes often revolved around accountability, preparedness, and loyalty. Those values remain timeless. What is particularly interesting about Gibbs is that his rules were not presented as universal truths. They were personal lessons formed through mistakes, grief, military experience, and emotional scars. That made them feel human rather than preachy. Gibbs did not claim perfection. He simply believed certain principles helped people survive difficult situations. That distinction matters because audiences respond more strongly to flawed wisdom than polished perfection. Gibbs broke his own rules occasionally. He struggled emotionally. He pushed people away. Yet he kept trying to live according to standards that gave his life structure. Harmon's connection to one of those rules suggests he understands why the character resonated so deeply. Viewers were not drawn to Gibbs because he was invincible. They were drawn to him because he carried pain without allowing it to destroy his sense of responsibility. Television history is filled with charismatic anti-heroes, but Gibbs represented something different. He was tough without glorifying cruelty. He was disciplined without losing compassion. He valued justice more than personal recognition. In an entertainment landscape often driven by cynicism, that combination stood out. The longevity of NCIS proves audiences still appreciate characters who embody integrity. Trends in television may shift toward darker or more morally ambiguous storytelling, but there remains enormous appeal in watching someone who genuinely tries to do the right thing. Harmon's portrayal succeeded because he never forced emotion unnecessarily. The most powerful Gibbs moments often involved silence, a glance at a photograph, a pause before speaking, a quiet expression of disappointment. Those understated moments allowed viewers to project their own feelings onto the character. That emotional restraint mirrored the philosophy behind many Gibbs rules. They were concise because Gibbs believed actions mattered more than speeches. He valued clarity. In today's world, where people often over-explain themselves constantly, that simplicity feels refreshing. There is also an interesting irony in the fact that Gibbs became famous for rules while simultaneously being a deeply emotional character underneath. The rules existed partly because emotions had wounded him so severely. They created boundaries that helped him function after devastating losses. That complexity elevated the character beyond a standard television boss. Gibbs was not emotionally cold because he lacked feelings. He was cautious because he felt things intensely. Harmon understood that nuance beautifully. Fans sensed authenticity in his performance because Harmon played Gibbs as someone carrying invisible history at all times. Even during lighter scenes, there was weight behind the character's eyes. That depth made viewers believe the rules mattered to him personally. In real life, many people create their own versions of Gibbs rules without realizing it. Personal philosophies develop through experiences, failures, heartbreak, and lessons learned the hard way. Some people become more guarded. Others become more compassionate. Over time, everyone forms internal guidelines about trust, loyalty, and survival. The appeal of Gibbs was that he verbalized those lessons with unusual clarity. His rules simplified complicated emotional realities into memorable statements. That made them easy to remember, but surprisingly difficult to forget. Harmon following one of those principles outside the show suggests he understands that wisdom is only meaningful if applied consistently. It is easy to admire good advice intellectually. Living according to it is much harder. Perhaps that is why audiences remain impressed by both Gibbs and Harmon. In an industry often associated with reinvention and image management, consistency stands out. Harmon built a reputation for steadiness, professionalism, and humility. Those qualities mirror the values Gibbs tried to instill in his team. The relationship between actor and character became unusually symbiotic over time. Harmon shaped Gibbs, but Gibbs also appeared to influence Harmon's public identity. That does not mean the actor lost himself inside the role. Instead, it suggests certain values resonated personally. There is something comforting about hearing that a long-running television character left a meaningful imprint on the person portraying him. Too often, entertainment can feel disposable. Shows arrive, dominate conversations briefly, and disappear. NCIS endured because its emotional core remained grounded in recognizable human truths. Loyalty matters. Trust matters. Paying attention matters. Protecting people matters. Those ideas are not revolutionary, but they endure because they are fundamental. The admiration fans feel toward Harmon after hearing about the rule he follows comes partly from relief. In an era where celebrity culture frequently produces disappointment, it is encouraging when someone associated with a beloved character genuinely seems to appreciate the deeper values behind that role. It also reinforces why Gibbs became more than simply a television investigator. He represented a code of conduct. Imperfect, sometimes stubborn, occasionally harsh, but rooted in responsibility. Viewers respected him because they believed he would show up when it mattered most. That reliability is increasingly rare, both on-screen and off. Characters often prioritize shock value over consistency. Public figures frequently reinvent themselves according to trends. Gibbs remained fundamentally himself, and Harmon appears to value that same authenticity. The enduring popularity of NCIS cannot be explained solely through crime stories or procedural formulas. At its heart, the show succeeded because audiences formed emotional attachments to people who felt dependable. Gibbs anchored that world through principles he refused to abandon easily. When Harmon says he follows one of Gibbs' rules in real life, it feels believable because his career reflects similar discipline. He never seemed desperate for attention. He allowed work to speak for itself. In many ways, that restraint became part of his appeal. Ultimately, the most impressive thing about Harmon embracing a Gibbs rule is not the rule itself. It is what the choice reveals about character, both fictional and real. He could have highlighted toughness or authority, but instead gravitated toward awareness and loyalty. That says more about strength than intimidation ever could. Gibbs taught viewers that wisdom is often quiet. It lives in observation, patience, and consistency rather than dramatic declarations. Harmon recognizing the value of that lesson after so many years makes perfect sense. Perhaps that is why fans continue connecting with both the actor and the character long after individual episodes fade from memory. The stories mattered, but the principles mattered more. People remember how Gibbs made them feel, protected, understood, and reminded that integrity still has value. And honestly, in today's world, that kind of reminder feels more impressive than ever.